Billy Ray, you wrote, directed, and produced the limited series The Comey Rule about the election of Donald Trump and eventual firing of FBI Director James Comey. Now, it aired last September in 2020. So I'm wondering, like, does the story resonate differently with you now, both a few months into the Biden presidency and also considering how much the Republican Party is still basically pledging loyalty to Trump and that brand of politics?
Well, the urgent necessity that I was feeling to go make this show, I had sort of hoped was just pessimism on my part. It turns out it was not pessimism at all. The America that I was really afraid of, that I was trying desperately to reach, turns out is a very real thing and a very, very dangerous thing now that we've seen January 6th and even more the attempts of the Republican Party to dismiss it.
And it's based on James Comey's book that he wrote about these experiences. Did was there a lot of research that went into it beyond there? Like, because there's so many characters and so many avenues.
Sure. It was the kind of work. This is going to sound pretentious, so forgive me. It was the kind of work a journalist would do. Before I had even set it up. At Showtime, I went and got on a plane and interviewed, dozens of people on both sides of the aisle, people who loved Comey and people who were not fans of Comey's. And of course, spent a lot of time with Comey himself, as well as people who were, senior members of his staff, and read everything that I possibly could, not just his book, of course, but the IG report and all the public facing reporting about what was happening at the FBI and what led to Comey's firing and how that group handled it. For me, the story was always my attempt to humanize and to tip my cap to a group of people that Trump inaccurately and cruelly called the deep state. People that I knew were just public servants who loved their country, loved their democracy, and cared deeply about the apolitical intentions of the institutions that made that democracy possible.
And from an emotional standpoint, digging so deep into these events, I know just watching it, there are some things where, like, because the Trump presidency was like wall to wall, like madness and events and chaos. So just to be reminded of some of these events was like, oh yeah, that happened, and it kind of gives you like a sinking feeling. How was it like sitting with this material for as long as it took to make the show?
It's a very strange headspace to be in. On the other hand, there's no way that I could have created characters that were more Shakespearean than James Comey and Donald Trump. One of the many blessings of telling true stories is that you get this human behavior handed to you that, you don't have to make up. It's just idiosyncratic and incredibly powerful. When I had written the first draft, I showed it to Comey, and of course, a lot of trepidation about that. And after he told me how positively he felt about it, which was a thrill, the first question I asked was, did I get Trump right? Did I get the experience of talking to Trump right? And he felt that I had, which was very, very gratifying. But the way he described it never left me. And it was the key to offering direction to Brendan when he played the part. Comey said that when you're talking to Trump, it's like getting hit by 10 fire hoses at once. And if you can grab one of them and wrestle it to the ground, you've really achieved something and you're congratulating yourself, but you're still getting hit by 9 more fire hoses. That's the way Brendan played it. That's the way Jeff Daniels reacted to it. And that's why the dynamic was as fun to watch as it was.
Now, of course, you've got Jeff Daniels and Brendan Gleeson, who are the central figures in the story. But the thing about a story like this is that you're telling a story about so many people who exist, public figures. What's the casting process like to bring an entire cast of actors in, playing real, recognizable people, not doing like mimicry, but also just capturing a sense of them?
Well, it requires a lot of luck. To be honest with you, when I wrote the character of Sally Yates, there was only one actress who could play it, and that was Holly Hunter. And if she would have said no, we would have been in trouble. Thankfully, she didn't. When I wrote Andy McCabe, there was only Michael Kelly who could play that guy. And if he said no, we would have been in trouble, but he didn't. And on down the line, Scoot McNairy playing Rod Rosenstein, on and on, and or Jennifer Ely playing Patrice Comey. You find great actors who can physically pull off the part. And then I won't say it was all luck. I think there was also, and this was unlike anything I had ever worked on before, actors felt like it was their civic duty to be a part of this show. Even Canadian actors, because we did 90% of our shooting in Toronto. Even north of the border, people came to that set feeling like it was their duty as people who believed in democracy to be a part of the show. And we benefited from that for sure.
And you talk about Trump being such a Shakespearean level character, and it's he's so disconcerting in certain ways, as you mentioned, the fire hoses, but just him as a persona. He can be both ridiculous and horrifying at the very same moment. So it's almost like how, as a director, in addition to Gleason's performance, which does so much of it, but how much as a director is it a challenge to rein that character in certain ways so it never feels like parody and it never feels, kind of over the top in a way that you're not intending.
Well, part of the reason why Brendan was the right guy was that he didn't want to do a parody. We both love Alec Baldwin, but we weren't doing a sketch. We were doing the first and possibly last dramatic interpretation of Donald Trump ever on film. And that brings with it a certain responsibility. His hair was going to be a little bit less of a joke than Trump's hair is. And his makeup was going to be much less of a joke. We were going to do those white circles and everything else orange. His suits were going to fit a little bit better than Trump's. And that, of course, extended to performance as well. Brendan never once came up to me and said, how can I be more of a mustache twirling villain here? What we talked about on set was, what does the character want and how is the character trying to get it? And that was it. And if there was ever a moment where that character was getting pushback from Comey, I would go up to Brendan and I would say, okay, that attempt to bulldoze him didn't work. Let's try another gear. And Brendan always has another gear. As long as you're keeping it sort of rooted in that idea of a character's intentions rather than a character's emotions, then a great actor just does the rest.
And Trump himself is, can be such a spiteful figure, of course, in real life, as is, addressed in the series. One character says he can take a beating, but he can't take a punch.
Right.
And here, your miniseries, acts as kind of a punch in that
Sure.
sense. Did you have any? I don't know if he's come out and said anything about this miniseries specifically, but was that ever a consideration as you were going into it? Like, what might the fallout be?
Sure. It was absolutely a consideration. I sat down and discussed it with my family before I endeavored to do this, because I thought there was a chance that there would be some blowback, and that even a chance that blowback might affect them. They were all for it. They were behind me. I did what I could to let the world know that I was trying to be objective, that I wasn't going to editorialize to the extent possible in the show. And I don't think we did. I don't think we took any cheap shots. It's not like I showed him, tweeting on the toilet or something. We stayed away from all of that. And again, we had Brendan's performance, which I felt lent a great reality and I hate to say it, but a little bit of dignity to it. So yeah, I didn't think Breitbart was going to be a big fan of the show. I didn't think Fox News was going to be doing us any favors, and they didn't. But the thing about Comey is he's hated by people on both sides. There were people on the left who absolutely blew our doors off because they felt that we had no right to make a movie about Comey. So the blowback was not just from the right when we made this. It really came from both ends, far ends of the spectrum, both fringes, I guess is the way to put it. You just have to block that out. I mean, the thing I'm doing right now is also for Showtime, and it's a miniseries about January 6th. There will be people who will be upset about that too. But I think we all have an obligation, as pretentious as this sounds, to reflect America back to itself at this point. Germany, 80 years outside of World War II, is still making movies about the Holocaust. They're still trying to figure out what that event meant. I think we're going to be unpacking the meaning of the Trump years for decades to come. What did it say about us? And I want to be a part of that conversation.
And as you mentioned, you're making a series about the insurrection.
Mhm.
And even more so than this, like that's so fresh, and like it feels like it's still unfolding in terms of our understanding of it.
Mhm.
Like is that a harder subject even to wrap your arms around than this particular one?
No, the challenge on that one is that everybody there had an iPhone, so there's 10,000 hours of footage to look through, which no human being can do. So I'm going to need help in terms of distilling that. But the challenge of Comey was telling a story that everybody thought they knew, but presenting it to them in a way that they didn't know, getting to the emotional truth of it, the emotional core. What was the cost to this guy as a person, as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a boss? That's the stuff people didn't know, and I think that's the stuff where Jennifer and Jeff and the incredible actresses that were playing the daughters, and the incredible actors that were around Comey as playing his senior staffers. They told that story. They told the story of the personal cost, what public servants had to pay on every level in Trump's DC, and that was for me the gift of the show to show America. Okay, you think you know this? Let me show you a different side of it, and then you be Jim Comey for 5 minutes and tell me how you would have reacted. And I think we got that.
Well, congratulations on the series,
Thank you.
and best of luck on your Insurrection series coming up. I'm very much looking forward to seeing that.
Thank you.
And
Me too.
we will have you back a little bit later to join the group discussion.
I'm excited. Thanks so much for your time.